been 5 weeks since I finished the WildBiome. It's the Wednesday the 9th of July. And I finished at the end of May. And I'm aware that I've been putting off doing an update video about how that all went down. I haven't really talking about its conclusion. So that's what this video is. For some reason I've been feeling a lot of resistance to talking about it. And I don't know. It felt like such a deep process for me. It felt like such an extreme thing to do in a lot of ways, that when I finished it, I almost just wanted to forget about it for a while. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it, because I did. And it really sharpened a lot of my skills, really made me aware of what I was capable of. And the sense of, I feel so empowered off the back of it. It's like food sovereignty to another level. You know, it's a type of food sovereignty that isn't even dependent on owning land. I bought very little of what I was eating realistically, apart from a few deer from some people, locally, and a bit of tallow from someone a little bit further away, some venison tallow. Everything that I was eating was pretty much not brought into my life with money, which is a pretty phenomenal thing. And I think that's what I've always wanted on this foraging journey. There is this part of me who feels a bit quieter now, but this part of me that I think many people carry, which is this fairly fundamental distrust of the various systems we find ourselves in. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the distrust of the food systems. And I felt like I needed to go through this initiation that was the WildBiome to really show to myself that I did know how to feed myself. That if various systems collapsed, which I kind of hope they don't, but I'm skeptical that they won't, at least within a few generations' time. Who knows? Maybe that's doomsday thinking. I know it's the part of me that feels that. It's not necessarily a dominant voice right now, but I don't have full faith. Let's put it that way. And knowing that I can feed myself from the land without even having to grow food in that one place is a pretty amazing feeling. In terms of in my body, I haven't had my results back yet. In my body, I didn't feel that different, if I'm honest. I was eating a fairly unprocessed diet before, whatever that really means. But just like a whole food diet. I would say that maybe, the first 10 days were brutal, as some of you are aware. It took me a while to understand how to shift from carb fuel to fat fuel. And then after about 2 weeks, it started to mellow out. But I wouldn't have said it was easy at any point. And it really showed me how much I'd almost been martyring myself in other areas of my life, and how much I wasn't allowing comfort in other areas of my life, and how much I was using food as one of my only emotional regulation tools, food and caffeine, and not in a particularly serious way, but just I'd stripped away all the various things that I was using for emotional regulation. Things from as simple as extra blankets on the sofa, or even having a sofa. A few years ago, I got rid of a load of my furniture, and I wanted to really kind of adopt a much more ground living lifestyle. And during the WildBiome, I actually bought back a lot of furniture, because I just felt like my house had become too austere in a weird way. It didn't feel cozy enough for me, and I had been putting myself in this position of martyrdom. I don't know, to prove something to myself or to someone else, or because I felt I deserved it or something. I don't know really. But what it meant is that I'd become like almost overly attached to food and caffeine, cups of tea and coffee, as my like way I'd go and kind of decompress. And on the month on the WildBiome, it showed me that I actually need to have a huge variety of emotional regulation tools. Yes, you know, the meditation and the yoga, those things picked up a lot more, or at least have done since. And those kind of more like intrinsic, internal ways for emotional regulation. But also, there's nothing wrong with having some of the external ones, the external comforts either, which for some reason I really thought there was. And now I feel like I've spread my my tools for emotional regulation and comfort and comforting myself over many more things, rather than, you know, get rid of everything, be a complete minimalist, but then it like focuses all of that onto the things I have allowed myself, which is like food and caffeine, basically. My arm's getting tired. But in my body, when I finished, I didn't really feel particularly different. I lost a lot of weight. Apparently that was water weight. I lost like 6 kilograms in the first week. And then that came back, and I probably had a net loss of 2 kilograms, maybe. I think I started at 79, and I finished at, let's just do that. I finished at like 76 or something like that. I think I wanted to have a very like romantic story that I felt like really amazing off the back of it. And I didn't feel really bad either. I just felt quite normal, quite neutral. Except that I think it really stretched my like mental and emotional health. That's what the initiation felt like a month of being like separate from the culture that I live in. That's what it felt like. You know, not eating with my mum when she came down, not going to the coffee shop, not going and getting a pint with someone, not going and like sharing the things I've come to learn as like the social customs, you know. You know, I can have various opinions about whether those social customs should exist or not, but they do, you know, and I do live in that world, in that kind of town world. And I'm really glad that I did the WildBiome, because it showed to me what I was capable of. But it's also put to bed this feeling of wanting to live like that forever, which is actually a bit of a relief, you know. There was always this like romantic part of myself, or maybe like fantastical part of myself that's like, I want to live like that long term. And this has shown me that I really don't want to do that. Not because the food was bad. Like, the food was great and I really enjoyed what I was eating. It's just the social. It's feeling as if I'm far on the fringes of culture in what I was doing, which is somewhere that I think a younger part of myself wanted to live, but increasingly I don't want to live there. And increasingly I want to be someone who like straddles the two worlds. And, you know, eating 100% wild felt too far in one direction, too far on one end of a polarity. And like I say, I'm so glad I did it for a month as part of an experiment. And this is like absolutely throwing like no shade on the project or the people who did it. Like, it's an amazing project and I'm so glad it's happening. I'm so glad I'm part of it. Such an honor to be part of it and to be part of this like mass revival of, you know, eating from the land and foraging and wild food. And I think it's nothing but a beautiful thing. But there's always been this part of me since I started foraging, probably even before, really, since I was really young, that wanted to see if I could do it, if I could live like that. And I showed myself that I kind of could, and it's kind of put that to bed. And I've always felt this tension between like personal integrity and like community integrity. For example, like I'm filming this on a phone. There's a part of me that wants to get rid of my phone. It always has been. And my personal integrity, like my personal alignment, let's say, would like to get rid of the phone. the thing that makes me not get rid of the phone is like cultural community integrity. That it makes the flow of life within my relationship to others in the modern world much more seamless. And there's a lot of things like that, like, for example, I think a classic one is that, when you go around to someone's house and they've made you a meal, a beautiful meal, or even not a beautiful meal, but they've made you a meal. Do my moral, do my morals get in the way of eating that meal if it doesn't line up perfectly with what I think I or the world should be eating? Do I turn down that meal, or do I eat it and be grateful for it? And of course, return to whatever I think I want to be eating outside of that. But do I, say like, no, I'm not going to eat that even though someone's made a beautiful meal for me? I think this is a really classic conundrum a lot of us find ourselves in the modern world, and one that I actually don't think many humans in the past have ever had to face. I think it's quite a modern thing that to have so many ethical and moral problems with the food that we eat. And normal food is like fraught with moral and ethical decisions, and not just meat, it's everything. And this is this like thing again of like personal or community integrity. I used to think the highest version of myself was the person who found a way to always eat whatever he wanted to eat, and he would like turn down things from other people and get rid of his smartphone and live in a perfect alignment on his terms. But now I see the value in the personal integrity. I'm not letting go of that. But there's a point at which that jeopardizes community health and community integrity. For example, like I said, a smartphone, having dinner with, going around to someone's house, turning down that meal, whatever. Now I hold community integrity at a slightly higher regard than personal integrity. Just slightly. As in, if my moral and ethical perspective is like pretty much always getting in the way of flowing with the community I'm in, then I think that's actually a bigger problem. That's not to say that I shouldn't raise my ethical and moral perspective at the appropriate moments, but to be 100% beating that drum non-stop to pursue my own personal alignment, I don't think it's quite worth my time in the way that I used to, and that may change again. But that's where I'm at right now. So I think that, the WildBiome has softened me. And, I feel like I've been kind of carrying around kind of like a lot of authority wounds based on school, based on growing up, based on all sorts of stuff. Having that distrust for systemic authority, distrust for institution, not thinking that the higher power, whoever that may be, I'm feeling that they don't have my best interest at heart. And because of those personal authority wounds, I project a lot of that onto the outside world. Now, that's not to say that the current systems we live in are good or right, or whatever that means, to use that type of language, or that I would prefer them to be a slightly different way, maybe. But I was definitely projecting a lot of my own stuff onto that. And where was I going with this? Basically, I feel less like middle finger at the system right now, after many years of banging that drum, or feeling as if I was banging that drum. Defining myself as someone who wanted to escape something, defining myself as someone who wanted to escape a system. The WildBiome felt like, in many ways, like the most escape of that system I've ever experienced. And of course, I didn't leave the system. I still very much was part of that. I was very much on grid in many ways. But it showed me that I don't actually want to be that extreme. and any kind of being part of any cultural shift. I want to be doing from the inside out, from a place of love, rather than from the outside in, from a place of fear. And being like, you guys, that's the wrong way to be. I'm gonna show the right way to be over there in a field somewhere. Like, whatever, you know. And no judgment to the people who do it on the outside of the system either. You know, I'm not saying that is the wrong thing to do either. It's just, I just don't think that's me, basically. And the last couple years, since I've started like social media and foraging and learning a lot about this kind of direction of reclaiming my relationship with the earth and with wild food, and a disconnection from a culture and a system that I really don't align with in a lot of ways, I've noticed the parts of myself that feel quite extreme, you know, and the extreme perspectives I have. And coming off the back of the WildBiome, it's just rounded those edges slightly, you know, because it was really hard. Because it was really hard not to necessarily it's not that I didn't have enough food. I had plenty of food. I found it really, really hard as a human, as a social animal, to feel so outside of the social norm. And I think in a lot of ways, I think that's quite beautiful as well. So I'm much more interested right now in being someone who nudges up against cultural norms and cultural boundaries, and, you know, pushes that slightly, but not blows up the whole wall of that boundary and goes like, look how wrong everything is. Because there are some beautiful things within the current system as well. And there's a lot of love and there's a lot of beauty as well. So I think that's why I waited a while to share. A lot came up for me on the WildBiome. A lot shifted internally for me. Whether that was, you know, because it was such an extreme initiation for me, or literally because of the relationship between my gut health and my mental health. I'm going through such a huge transformation of my gut health over the period of a month, and basically changing the whole way that I eat, that I've learned to eat over the previous 26 years. Whether that had like a physical effect on my mental health, who knows? I couldn't say what it is. All I know is I feel very, very different. I feel softer, I feel clearer, I feel less angry. I feel much more able to hold and to acknowledge beauty where I see it, and to not be constantly looking for the problem in things. And to be able to connect with like the little Seth in me as well. For some reasons felt a lot easier. So I think that's all I wanted to share today. Thank you for watching. I'll continue to be sharing things on social media, I'm sure, but I think maybe in a slightly different way. So we'll see. Lots of love, guys. Go well.